have Emily King, who's the founder of Prospector, CEO of Global Venture Consulting, and we turn our attention to gold and mineral mining, how artificial intelligence can help to find and fund mining projects in the Caribbean. As I said, Emily King, she's the founder of Prospector, CEO of Global Venture Consulting. She is the developer of a new search engine for the mining industry and is CEO of Global Venture Consulting. Emily is also the host of On the Rocks, a podcast discussing mining insights and innovation through a uniquely lighthearted lens with listeners on every continent except for Antarctica. Emily is a geologist with considerable experience in emerging frontier and post-conflict markets such as Afghanistan, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and Mexico. Emily's focus is on finding and developing the natural resources our world will need for the future we all want, and doing it in the right way. She believes that technology, innovation, and relationships are all equally important to bringing new capital into the mining industry and transforming the world of mining in our world. In addition to leading Prospector and Global Venture, Emily holds leadership positions at the board level of public, private, and nonprofit organizations. We now welcome Emily to the podium to make her presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. That's a tough panel and presentation to follow. So I hope I can measure up. But we'll talk about gold and we'll talk about gemstones. All right. So thank you again for having me. I appreciate the introduction and being invited to come. I'm always excited to come to regions that are trying to reevaluate their role in the mining industry globally. We are experiencing a tremendous shift in what's going on in the commodity sector, with mining in particular. And it's a unique opportunity to leverage technology to leapfrog many of the lessons that more developed mining jurisdictions have learned the hard way. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how artificial intelligence in particular can help to find and fund mining projects in the Caribbean. So in particular, if you've been hearing any of the news about critical minerals in particular, has anybody heard about rare earths recently? Battery metals, lithium batteries, cobalt, all of these things that frankly, most people didn't hear about or care about probably 15 years ago. Right now where we are is the world is running out of metal. There are not enough mining projects in the development pipeline to supply the world with the amount of metal and minerals we will need for the low carbon future. When people think about low carbon economies, they think about wind turbines, solar panels, electric vehicles, right? Battery storage of energy. What are all of those things made out of? Metal, right? They're incredibly metal intensive. Under the International Energy Agency's Net Zero by 2050 roadmap, the share of power from renewables would go from 10% to 60%. In order to do that, you've got a 2/3 gap between the supply of the metals required to make all that stuff and what we currently have in the pipeline, right? We've got a 30 to 40% gap versus demand for copper, lithium, and platinum supplies, right? So where is all that metal gonna just magically come from, right? I joke that sometimes I think people think there's like this lithium fairy out there, right? Where just lithium is going to magically appear to be turned into batteries, right? That all requires investment. It requires capital. Mining as an industry is dramatically underrepresented and undervalued on the S&P 500, which is just one example, right? This molecule crisis, as we call it, there's not enough molecules of stuff to make what we need, is looming quickly, right? But when you look at the S&P, mining companies represent only 0.00325% of the S&P 500, but they support industries representing 40%. How does that make any sense? Right? So all of these companies on the S&P are making things with metal and minerals, yet the companies that actually mine the metal and minerals are dramatically underrepresented. All right, so we're looking at about a $13 trillion prize is what we talk about. That's according to the IMF, the demand for energy transition metals alone would boost their production value to almost $13 trillion over 2 decades, right? But mining is really hard. It is technical. There's a lot of science involved. You have to know where the metal and minerals are. There's a lot around land ownership and access to resources. It costs a lot to build a mine, right? Just a gold mine, and gold mines are relatively easy. Your average small gold mine takes about $50 million to discover and bring into production. So that's kind of a global standard. So it is relatively expensive. And in order to do all of that, in order to get the money to build the mine and bring it into production, you have to understand ahead of time how much it's going to cost to build it and process it and how much it's going to be worth. And typically you're building mines in jurisdictions where there may be questions about how long are you going to own that land, right? A typical gold mine takes 5 to 7 years to bring into production from true discovery. So are you still going to own that project in 5 to 7 years? If you're looking at a large scale copper project or something complicated like rare earths or cobalt, you need to have, you need to know that you're still going to own that project in 20 to 30 years, right? So how stable is the jurisdiction that you're working in? So what we do at Prospector is we use a specific kind of artificial intelligence and machine learning to help mining investors or prospective mining investors navigate some very specific technical reports, right? In order to find and fund the mining projects that are the right fit for their portfolio. There is currently a pretty dramatic, what we call gap in the digital structure of the mining industry. We're about 10 to 12 years behind oil and gas, right? And there was a question earlier, somebody asked me to kind of go through what a typical mining project looks like in terms of evolution. And if you look at this slide from the left, exploration all the way through to production, the value of the project goes up, of course, over time, and the risk level goes down. So the area that we really focus on at Prospector is de-risking that early stage. So if you in your home countries have projects maybe that people are aware about, but there hasn't been a lot of work done on it, right? The work that we do in mining, which includes exploration and drilling and feasibility studies and economic assessments, that's all the work that de-risks the project in order to bring that capital in. And what we do at Prospector is we allow an investor to go through all of that work, all of that data faster and easier, because none of us want to read 400 or 500 page technical reports anymore. I don't know if anybody ever did, frankly, right? They're long and they're boring and they're very technical. So we make them all searchable. We're all used to having things on our tablets, on our phones, on our computer screens, and that's what we do, is we put the data in a format for the investor where they can easily compare and contrast potential investments globally. All right, so let's talk about artificial intelligence a little bit, right? The reason artificial intelligence is important, other than it being a cool, sexy, high-tech thing, right? That just everything these days supposedly has AI involved. AI is important because it empowers people to make decisions faster and more accurately and make sure that they don't miss an opportunity, right? Because maybe of their own bias and assumptions going into an investment decision. There's a really famous academic in the world of AI who broke human activities into these 5 categories, right? The collection of data, the retrieval of information out of that data, prediction, judgment, and action. What we do at Prospector is only the first two steps, right? There's a lot of discussion around the right role of artificial intelligence, and our perspective is we are not investment brokers. We don't make investment recommendations. Artificial intelligence should never recommend an investment that replaces a human action, right? A human judgment or action. So again, what we do is we help with those first two steps. So if any of you in the room are looking to attract additional investment into your mining sector, that's what we focus on by making it easier. So how can we specifically help Caribbean projects? What we need as a whole, as a world and as a mining industry, is to make sure that good capital gets to good projects. Right? And then what happens kind of in any industry is people operate in a small space, right? Everybody knows each other. I got a guy, my guy brings me all the good projects, right? I see some folks laughing at this table in the middle. So unfortunately, that's not really true, right? Your guy does not know all the good projects going on in the world, and he's gonna miss some, right? And you might lose a bunch of money because of that. Right? So that's where artificial intelligence and technology like Prospector helps, right? You can search the whole world as an investor based on what you're looking for in commodity, the stage of the project, corporate performance, some really specific things to mining, such as NPV, net present value. If you're not familiar with that, it's very similar to an EBITDA, but for a mining project, right? It's a key indicator when you're looking at mining investment. So really what we do is we help reduce analyst time. We get people to the right projects faster. And what you see on this screen here, sorry, that was me, is a map of kind of the region and the number of projects we already have in our database that investors are already looking at in the region. Right? So we pull data from these very technical public disclosure documents. It is public information. It's just not very accessible and it's hard to understand. So we get all of that anyway, right? And I raise this because, how do you attract mining investment? You have to have good geology. You have to have strong legal and regulatory infrastructure, attractive taxes and royalty, but you also have to have a really strong policy climate. Is anybody in the room familiar with the Fraser Institute and their policy perception index? Oh, I see, nope, I don't see any hands. All right, so basically this is where all of the global mining companies rate the countries. Right? They rate their experience investing in and working in 89 countries globally, was the most recent survey. So they give you a report card if you are the government, right? And this is like one of the most important things if you want to attract foreign direct investment into your mining sector. You have to, number one, be included in the survey. A lot of emerging markets who are new to the sector don't even know about it. But number two, you have to make sure that the mining companies in your space are giving you, an honest but a positive recommendation. This just shows the top and the bottom for the 2021 survey. And this is important because you're competing for investment. Right? Investors are not going to come to the Caribbean just out of nowhere. Even it's a big difference in how oil and gas works. Oil and gas, the big major companies will show up and do everything from the very beginning and will invest a lot of money in exploration and grow it. And that's not how it works in the mining industry, right? It's the small, what we call junior firms that come in. They are, under $1 million market cap on the TSX. Right? These are crazy geologists that love to travel and find gold. So it's a different group that kicks the industry off than in the oil and gas industry. So you're competing for those folks to come in and invest. I raised this because I checked yesterday as I was finalizing my presentation. I know we're going to be talking about Guyana and Suriname in our panel later today. In 2021, Guyana was ranked 69th globally by the Fraser Institute. And unfortunately, that ranking was down from 39th in 2019 and 2018. That's a pretty big drop, right? And that would certainly be something that Guyana would want to engage with and understand, where did that come from? Suriname, unfortunately, was dropped completely from the rankings this year because of lack of participation from the mining companies, right? And this is why it's so important, why I'm so appreciative of the invitation to come and speak at the summit, because these are things that if you're not already engaged with the industry, again, who would have ever heard of this, right? If you aren't in the industry, and countries may not understand how dramatically important they are for investment. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to, here, this is the slide I was referring to. So when you look at this, all right, so what do you do with it? Great, that's lovely, optimistic news for the morning, right? How do you lower that risk? The key thing that you can do is to provide transparent and accessible access to data. That lowers the barrier to investment, right? And it allows you to compete more evenly against all of these other jurisdictions. All right, and I'm gonna show, this is a little slide, and hopefully this shows you, this is what a Suriname or a Guyana or a Barbados page on Prospector could look like, right? These are all projects in Mexico with publicly traded mining companies. And it's going to go through and it shows the investors' recent updates. Then we show all of the resources and reserves of every project in your country, your production, right? Your production costs, your quarterly production. So these are all really important things for mining investors. And as we get further down, publicly traded companies, they're in the region, presentations from your government on what you're trying to do, and data downloads, right? So what you see here, we did a predictive analytics project for the entire country of Mexico that integrated all of the geospatial data, geologic data, public mining company data, all into one system, and then use specific algorithms to predict where in Mexico you are most likely to find deposits of a certain type, right? This is actually not that hard to do. And it's easier to do with an island, that's for sure, right? Because you're dealing with a contained system. But these are the types of projects that would allow an investor just sitting at their desktop at home to understand a lot more about what companies are already doing in your market and what they could be doing if they put money into a project in your country, right? You are de-risking their investment by allowing them to do their due diligence and their analysis in a really efficient way. And I'm happy to show anybody who would like to see the platform, of course, after this session. The other thing I want people to understand is a lot of this data, much like the results of the Fraser Institute rankings, it's already out there, right? And you don't want data telling your story without your perspective, your vision, your goals, right? And your plan for the future. So it's really important because a lot of this public disclosure information people can see anyway, and they can come up with their own narrative on perhaps why Guyana fell in the Fraser Institute rankings, right? So you have to engage. We on Prospector have over 9,000 projects on our platform, updated daily, over 2,000 companies. In Guyana alone, we have data on 28 projects and 8 pretty sizable public companies who are operating there, and in Suriname, 12 projects and 8 companies. So I already have that data, right? And it's public, investors are looking at it, right? And it's really important to get your story out there as part of that investment case. And what does that look like? You know, that it's important when a country is trying to attract foreign direct investment that you do it in a very scalable way. I've unfortunately worked in countries where they put their best projects out first. And every country is going to make mistakes when they try to attract investment into the mining sector. I mean, you have to. If you've never really done it before at a large scale, you're going to have challenges. So you want to do it in a really scalable way. Start with projects that can start small with local support, local stakeholders and business people, and grow them, right? How do you attract investment when you're doing that? What we do is we would do, you know, a country page, right, to highlight all that information about your country. You can then move to the hosting of tender and investment data, right? So that investors can access data in a modern tech platform. You want to have a one-stop shop for geology and technical data. I've worked in a lot of markets where corruption is a significant concern. The biggest mistake that countries who are concerned about corruption make is they charge money for data, right? And they think that they're doing the right thing because they think, well, then legitimate people will pay for it. Unfortunately, you set it up where some people have data, some people don't, and there's just a lot that goes on there. So if you can make the data accessible and as freely as possible, it actually encourages a higher level of investor to come into your space. And one thing on the artificial intelligence, what we can do is look at all of the projects that you have in your country and help you prioritize which are the ones that you should put out for investment first. What makes sense given the level of infrastructure and local support that you have, combined with market conditions. Which are the minerals that people want on the global market, and which parts of the market want them? Right? We've heard from Congressman Mark Green that there are certainly countries in the world that will come in and claim that they're going to buy up everything and pay you good money, right? And in a lot of those times, you end up with a lot of debt with those countries, China in particular. So how can you structure your country's pathway into mining in a way that encourages American investors, Australian, Canadian, right? It's really important, the how of how you do that. So if you do the right data and investment platform program, and you plan it with the right folks, you'll have long-term partners in the industry, and you can dramatically change the low carbon future of our world with the need for all kinds of minerals and resources that we didn't need 10 years ago. It's a unique opportunity for this region because there is a lot of mineral wealth in the Caribbean and the region. So with that, I guess I don't know if I should take questions now or if you all want to move to a panel.